I am live. Hello, and thank you again for watching tonight's latest video. Gordon Causey. And as always, Candy the Wonder Pup. What? All she wants is her treat. Shake ball. Lay down. Lay down. Speak. Speak. Come on up. All right. Good catch. All right. Candy is taken care of. Man, the beard is getting big. I'm going completely unshaven. I'm letting this baby grow. Maybe see where things are come December of this coming year. Maybe I'll get an offer to play Santa. We shall see. Although my hair is still, what hair I have left is still brown, sandy brown. But I guess that's covered up by the red cap. Anyway, I see I have someone watching. Let me put the live chat on. I'm going to be talking about Canadian politics tonight. But before I get going, as always, I'm up. I think 775 was the latest number I saw for the number of subscribers I have. So as always, thank you very much. It's genuinely appreciated. The more subscribers I have, the more visible my channel is, and likewise with the likes and the comments. It's growing. And so without any further preamble, what happened today, just today, Thursday, the 21st of March, 2024, is the Conservatives, the opposition Conservatives, the official opposition, had tabled in the legislature today something referred to as a confidence motion. And that's significant because if the motion had passed, it would have meant that it was a call on the members of parliament to vote no confidence in the government, to say that the governing Liberals under Justin Trudeau do not have the confidence of the House of Commons. However, the motion was defeated. I saw a video put out by Michelle Rempel Gardner. I think I'm pronouncing her name right. She is a Conservative MP from Alberta, and she put out a video. That was the first I had heard that there was going to be a confidence motion put forward and that a vote would take place. And right from the get-go, I said, well, it won't pass. It can't pass because there's no way that the NDP and the Bloc are going to support the Conservative motion and send Canadians to an election. Because if the vote of no confidence put forward by the Conservatives had passed, then what would have happened is that would signal that the governing Liberal Party under Trudeau had lost the confidence of the House of Commons, and then the Governor General, who is now the King's representative, we are a parliamentary democracy, the head of our government, in point of fact, is the King, Charles, and he's represented in Canada by our Governor General. And I'm horrible. I don't even know who the Governor General is. It was Dave Johnson. It was, what was it? Julie Payette. It's been Michael Jean. It's been Adrian Clarkson. I don't know who it is currently, but they are the Crown, the representative of the Crown. And before anything becomes a law in Canada, the Governor General signs it, and that's called royal assent. Anyway, if a no confidence vote had passed, then the Governor General would have been called on to dissolve Parliament for the purpose of calling a general election, and Canadians would have been going to the polls in a month or so's time. But I saw no way and I've mentioned this before in previous videos talking about Canadian politics, I see no way that the NDP and Bloc is going to, that they want to go to an election early. They want, they have jobs that probably pay in wages and benefits $250,000 a year or so, and they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. And so the NDP right now has what's called, I forget exactly the term, a supply confidence agreement. It's not a coalition. It's not a formal coalition government. In a formal coalition government, if the NDP and the Liberals join together, then certain cabinet postings would be given to the NDP. And as it is, basically what the NDP has agreed to do is to vote on any confidence matters in support of the Trudeau Liberals. I'm going to read a comment right now. JCP. She is another friend of the family. I'm assuming the friend she's referring to is Michelle Rempel Gardner, and the family is the puppet masters pulling the strings on both sides. There's an old expression which says the right wing and the left wing are both a part of the same bird. At any rate, so there's no election, and I don't think anyone should be surprised. I did learn something through the reporting. This supply confidence arrangement between the NDP and the Liberals has something of an expiry date on it, and it's in June of 2025. So basically what has happened is the NDP has said that we will agree to support the Trudeau Liberal government on matters of confidence and ensure that the government doesn't get defeated and we don't go into election. But that agreement that they have runs until June of 2025. They could pull their support early. They could pull out of that agreement, but I see nothing that would do it. I cannot foresee any situation where the NDP would pull their support. What the Conservatives in their statements were hoping for was that there would be an election on the carbon tax. They've been pushing back against the raising of the carbon tax. In earlier videos, I've said it's going up by 15%. I believe it is actually 23%. And what that means is that Canadians, when we go to the pump, we're going to be paying another 6 cents a liter or more. And we've already seen in advance gas prices in my area had been running in and around $1.40 a liter. And since in the last week or so, the price of gas has gone up from about $1.40 a liter to $1.50 and a little higher. I'm seeing $1.50 to $1.53. So a significant jump. If you're putting in 50 liters of gas, that's $2.50 more per fill up. If you're putting it about $5 a fill up. About $5 extra every time you fill up the car on a 50-liter tank when gas prices go up a dime. And I honestly believe that with the increase coming, the oil and gas companies saw it as an opportunity to, we'll raise it a little now and then we'll raise it more later. Canadians are already being conditioned to accept higher prices at the fuel pump. And then electricity, heating, anything that travels, costs are going to go up significantly come April. And it's just the beginning. I think we all know this. This carbon tax is going to continue eating away at our standard of living. It's going to be bad. And the Conservatives, in tabling this motion for a vote of no confidence, their stated objective was to have an election with the carbon tax being the central theme. How they ever thought the NDP and Bloc would go along with it, I mean, come on. The NDP has supported the Liberals on all their climate, on all the climate nonsense that we hear coming. And so it wasn't in the cards. And I actually think it was a bad move on the Conservatives to lose this. It puts a little bit of wind in the Liberal sails, because they won the vote. The Trudeau Liberals have maintained the confidence of Canada's Parliament, of the House of Commons. And so you can put, if you're a Liberal, you can put a bit of a positive spin on it. I don't think it's enough that it'll change their fortunes substantially. But if the Liberals were to climb just even a little bit in the polls, that wouldn't shock me, because the Conservatives put forth a motion and it was defeated. Even more alarming is an article that came out in the I've linked down below a link to an article in the National Post on this story. It's about a secret RCMP report that warns Canadians that we may revolt as we realize how broke we are. The government, we've seen since even before the COVID era, but certainly the COVID era raised the stakes. Trudeau is on record as saying he doesn't concern himself with economic matters, and that's obvious. He, just tax and spend, tax and spend, tax and spend. And so Canadians are seeing we're seeing our standard of living it's getting hammered. The majority of us, not everyone, the hyper wealthy, the uber rich can weather the storm far easier than households with two working members struggling to pay the bills, struggling to put gas in the tank, to pay the heating bill, the gas bill, and the grocery bill, and every other bill. And this report is painting a very bleak picture, and is actually saying that Canadians, as we realize how screwed we are, we might actually revolt. It could be a situation like we had in Ottawa when the truckers, and God bless them for it, finally said enough and were able to put pressure on the government to roll back all the COVID nonsense restrictions that were not based on science, as admitted to, the social distancing, the 6 feet stuff that Anthony Fauci, head of the National Institutes of Health in the US, formerly, has now admitted there was no scientific backing, no scientific rationale behind that. And if you take away social distancing, the whole house of cards falls apart. But what's amazing is the propaganda was so effective that even now that they've admitted that there was no science behind social distancing and this stay 6 feet away from everyone, people still frantically pick up the cards and want to reconstruct that house of cards. They will not accept that the entire thing was bogus, because that would mean I think part of it is just simple arrogance. So I'm smart. I can't be fooled. Yeah, you were fooled. You rolled up your sleeve 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And the last thing I'm going to mention, but I would invite you to read that article, linked down below. It's reported in the National Post, not my favorite newspaper, but what happened was a law professor, an assistant professor of law in British Columbia, who's all big on his big focus is on secrecy in government. He filed a FOIA, or Freedom of Information request, with the government and managed to get his hands on this secret RCMP report. However, it is heavily redacted, blacked out, and it's damning enough what we see in that report. Imagine, I would love to know what's in the redacted parts, but it's like the contracts that Canada signed with Pfizer and Moderna for the vaccines. We're not allowed to see those either. One interesting point, while I'm still talking about this RCMP report, painting a bleak and doom picture for Canadians. One of the things they point out is that climate change is supposed, there's going to continue to be wildfires, flooding, and all manner of catastrophic weather-related events related to so-called climate change. And so what they're saying in this report, and I would have to assume, I don't know this, but I would have to assume that this is a report that the government of Canada wanted, that the Trudeau Liberals wanted the RCMP's expertise in how is the public going to react to us screwing them over and raising their taxes and making the cost of living unbearable. How are Canadians going to react? And the RCMP put its, pencil in the sharpener and said, there's the potential for revolt. I wonder how much it would take. I don't think most Canadians have the backbone of our truckers. God bless them again. But I just want to drive home the point that even with all these increased taxes to supposedly fight climate change, they're still saying we're still going to have catastrophic weather events. Guess what? Climate changes. There are climactic cycles that last 300, 400, 500 years. Yes, it seems unnatural because we've never seen this in our lifetimes. That's because climactic cycles of warming and cooling last centuries. They go beyond living memory. And so, climate changes. It always has, irrespective of human activity. And irrespective of what we do and how we impoverish ourselves and how much we can make life totally unbearable, we can raise the cost of living through the ceiling. It's not going to stop climate change because climate changes. There was a period between 1400 and 1800 of climate change that went on when there were cataclysmic weather events that occurred throughout Northern Europe that are recorded in the annals of history. We know about these things. And back then, they thought it was human caused then too. Back then, they blamed human beings for impacting climate change in the 14, 15, 1600s. What were humans doing to affect the climate back then? It was primarily believed that it was mostly women acting in concert with the devil to destroy agriculture and people's way of life, the economy. And they called it weather cooking, getting in, making a deal with the devil. And then horrible things like hailstorms would come and kill, and actually killed people. The hail was, the size of golf balls or baseballs, and anyone who was outdoors, even a human being, would be killed, as well as cattle and everything else. And crops were destroyed and everything. And no one had ever seen anything like that before. It has to be unnatural because it had never happened in living memory. This planet goes through climactic changes. And what we're shaking our fist at anyone who thinks that by raising our taxes that we're going to have a significant or any impact at all on climate. Give me a break. The climate's going to change. We're just going to be poor. And the last thing that happened was that within the last week, there was an NDP motion that was voted on with respect to the situation going on between Israel and the occupied territories, Gaza and the West Bank. Most of the focus is on Gaza because that's where Hamas is the governing authority. They've been the governing authority there, I think, since 2008. I know that Israel formally ceded control of Gaza to the residents of the Gaza Strip, who typically are referred to as Palestinians, formerly Egyptians, because up until 1967, the Gaza Strip had been, from 1949 until 1967, the Gaza Strip was Egyptian territory. They lost it to Israel during the 1967, I think that was the 6-Day War, when Israel was attacked by Egypt, Jordan, and by Syria. And Egypt lost control of the Gaza Strip, and the residents in there then at some point stopped being Egyptians and at some point became Palestinians. But anyway, the resolution, the motion that was voted, it was affirmed, and I've read a bit of it. It was hard to get it was hard to get a finalized version of, because they kept changing it. They kept putting in amendments, but it eventually passed. And one of the tangible impacts it's going to have is apparently it's very strong possibility that Canada will no longer supply arms of any kind to Israel. I have a copy of it up now in front of me, which a reporter shared. Given that the situation in the Middle East is devastating to many Canadians, particularly those with friends and family members in the region, and the death toll in Gaza has surpassed 30,000, with 70% of the victims being women and children, I would add into that, as per Hamas's health authorities, I'm not saying they're wrong, but at the same time, I don't completely trust them either. They make the note, they added this was an amendment that was approved. Hamas is a listed terror organization, or a listed terrorist organization in Canada, whose attacks on October 7th, 2023 killed nearly 1,200 Israelis, and over 100 hostages remain in Hamas's captivity. And said 1.7 million residents of Gaza are displaced and are at risk of starvation, death, and disease. And Gaza is currently the most dangerous place in the world to be a child. No arguments there. The United Nation reports over 70% of civilian infrastructure in Gaza, including homes, hospitals, schools, water and sanitation facilities, have been destroyed or severely damaged by military attacks. Don't have an issue with that. On January 26, the International Court of Justice ordered 6 provisional measures, including for Israel to refrain from acts under the Genocide Convention, prevent and punish the direct and public incitement to genocide, and take immediate and effective measures to ensure provision of humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza. And it called on the House of Commons for the government of Canada to A, demand an immediate ceasefire, the release of all hostages, and that Hamas must lay down its arms. That's not going to happen. Hamas is not giving up. They're not releasing the hostages, and they're not laying down their arms. So then it said B, cease the further authorization and transfer of arms exports to Israel to ensure compliance with Canada's arms export regime, and increase efforts to stop the illegal trade of arms, including to Hamas. how Canada can stop the illegal trade of arms coming into the Gaza Strip is beyond me, because they're smuggled in, and then ensure continued funding of the United Nations Relief and Workers Agency, this UNRWA, to meet the dire humanitarian need, engage with the United Nations internal investigation and independent review process, and ensure implementation of necessary long-term governance reforms and accountability measures, and support the prosecution of all crimes and violations of international law committed in the region, and support the work of the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. I'm going to leave it there. If anyone wants to read this tweet, I'll put it in the chat field, and it will give you a reasonably good, you can read what Canada voted on in favor of. It has already caused 3, and I believe they're Jewish members of the House of Commons, Liberal members of that, 3 Jewish members of the Liberal caucus voted against this motion. One of them was Anthony Housefeather, who I mentioned before. I've mentioned before here the fact that he, in an open committee meeting, admitted to Canadians that the COVID vaccines were not properly tested, and that's why we're not allowed to see the contracts. The reason Canadians are not allowed to see what the contracts are that we have with Pfizer and Moderna and the rest is because the conditions were different, and because the pharmaceutical companies developed these products without doing the proper testing, which would mean they would take years, likely 10 plus years. Instead, they just rush them through in a few short months. And so because of that, Canadians can't see it. I find Anthony Housefeather, it's almost like it's irony, the fact that in his statement regarding the COVID vaccines and how we're not allowed to see the contracts, he said this was because Canadians desperately wanted a vaccine. And my argument to him is, and would be, if I was ever to meet the guy, I'd say tons of Canadians, millions of Canadians weren't demanding a vaccine. Now he's in a situation where Canada's Parliament has signed, has put forward a motion. This is a statement that, you know, Canadians are very it was very pro-Palestinian and very anti-Israel. And so that's the statement that was put forward. You know, free Palestine was basically the statement. A little watered down, recognizing that, yeah, Israel was attacked brutally, but Canada, you know, the thrust of that motion was Canadians showing their support for the Palestinians. And I think it's fair to say that maybe a majority of Canadians do support the Palestinians, but not all. I think it's fair to say that a lot of Canadians were desperate for a vaccine, not all. And the situation in Israel is just mind-blowingly complex. And Canadians, a lot of people in the world, we want to just look at things very simply and very superficially, and then come to a judgment. We want to rush to judgment, and so we look at things in a very superficial manner, and then and quite often we react emotionally. And you see the images coming from Gaza, and they're absolutely horrific. What's going on there is horrific. I don't know what Israel should do, quite frankly. They're confronted with Gaza, where the governing authority is Hamas, which is an organization which has as its stated objective to wipe Israel off the map. For, Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. They want Israel gone from the river to the sea. That's all of Israel. The river is the Jordan, the sea is the Mediterranean, and they want it all. They want Israel gone, and they want it replaced by a Palestinian state. And I think, there's a short-sightedness that a lot of people have, and a lot of ignorance of history about how Israel came to be. And I was guilty of it myself for years. I used to think that Israel was basically just gifted their country, and that Britain and the UN basically said, here you go. And that's how, and then, one day it was under British control, and then the British, signed a paper and said, here's your country. And that that was how Israel came to exist in 1948. Then I learned the history, and the history is completely removed from that fantasy fiction that I used to believe. The reality of the situation is that Great Britain took control of this region, and beyond just Israel. There was the British mandate for Palestine. There was the British mandate for Mesopotamia. There was the French mandate for Syria and Lebanon. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, the French and the British basically carved up the Middle East, and there were areas mandates of French influence and areas mandates of British influence. And the British mandate for Palestine was formally established. They were already administering the area even before World War I had actually ended. And their mandate for Palestine was formalized at something called the San Remo Conference in 1920, kind of a breakout of the Paris Peace Accords that gave us the Treaty of Versailles. The San Remo Conference was dealing specifically with the Middle East. And so they created a formal mandate for Palestine and a mandate for Mesopotamia, and the French were given mandates in places like Lebanon and Syria. But that British mandate for Palestine included all of present-day Israel as well as all of present-day Jordan. That's Palestine right there. So when you talk about the people living in Jordan, they could equally be called Palestinians too, because the territory which they now occupy used to be part of the British mandate for Palestine. But now we call them Jordanians. And it's such a convoluted history. And I don't know what Israel should do to ensure its existence, to ensure its survival, to ensure that it isn't wiped off the map, as is Hamas's stated intention. And Hamas isn't even the biggest threat that Israel faces. A far greater threat is Hezbollah in the north. They have, estimates say, 100,000 plus rockets aimed at Israel. Enough rockets to completely overwhelm any missile defense network, any Iron Dome. They could inundate it, and there's no way that any anti-missile defense system would be able to cope. And so how does Israel ensure its survival? I'm sure what Hamas wants is a ceasefire so that they can reorganize, regroup, and plan for the next attack, because when they launched the October 7th attack, their leadership stated this is just the rehearsal. More is planned. They want to wipe Israel off the map. And Israel is not going to allow that to happen. They're not going to allow themselves. They are going to defend themselves. Whether people think they have the right to defend themselves or not is moot, because they are going to defend themselves. And that's what they've been doing ever since the aftermath of that October 7 attack. I have Johnny Appleseed put up a comment, and he just wrote Exodus, something I've been thinking about actually. After the videos I did of the past couple nights, I went back and reread parts of Exodus and the story of Moses. We're coming up on the season of Passover, and as my last video said, I much prefer that term because this is the Passover season. This is when death passes over. Death passed over Israel when they were still in bondage in Israel, or in Egypt rather. When Israel was in bondage in Egypt, the angel of death came and passed over Israel. And then when Jesus went to the cross, death passed over everyone who puts their faith, trust, who recognizes Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, inviting him into your heart. Then death passes over. This life is not the end. The death that happens here is a temporal death. There is eternal life after this. And in the Bible at times it's referred to as the second death. Anyway, but this wasn't one of my talking about the Bible videos, so I'm going to leave that. But anyway, we're stuck with the Trudeau Liberals, at least until June of 2025, I'm convinced. And the latest, October 2025, is the date by which Canada we have to go to an election. There's a fixed election date law. And so the longest this current session of Parliament can go on is October of 2025. The one thing is, if the Liberals see themselves climbing in the polls, and if they see the potential for them to either at least maintain their minority, or certainly if they saw the potential for a majority, in that instance, and in that instance only, could I see Justin Trudeau going to the Governor General, asking that the Parliament be dissolved for the purpose of calling an election. He's not going to do it when he's probably the most unpopular, certainly the most unpopular prime minister in my lifetime. And with his support somewhere around 22, 23, 24%, with the Conservatives at 40 plus, a 15, 20 point gap. And right now, if an election were held today, the Conservatives would romp and become a majority government, no question. But that's today. A lot can happen. A week is a lifetime in politics, and we have months to go. So sad to say, but we're stuck with Trudeau for the foreseeable future. And I don't see any way around it. And no, I don't see any more comments coming in. JCP, thank you. I don't disagree with your take on Michelle Rempel Gardner. It's so hard to know. It's so hard to tell friend from foe in today's world. This notion of controlled opposition is absolutely, has a ton of merit. Again, I'll repeat that old saying, the right wing and the left wing are part of the same bird. It's the same puppet masters controlling the strings on both sides of the house, both in the government benches and on the opposition side. And the degree to which we can rely on Pierre Poilievre, right now, he's my choice. And it's just, if I have to pick between Trudeau and Poilievre, it's no contest. The last two elections, I did vote PPC, but they only polled in around 5% nationally, my riding. I did organize an event for the local candidate. I even got up and spoke briefly and introduced him just in a local park where we tried to have a meet and greet where people could come out and meet the PPC candidate. His name was Nathan Lang. And in this riding, he polled 7-8%. So he did a little bit better than PPC candidates did on average, but not a lot. He was certainly never a threat. The MPP or the MP for my riding is Philip Lawrence, who's the conservative. This is a decidedly conservative area. Anyway, enough rambling. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, you're welcome. Next one I'm going to be doing, it'll probably be Sunday night. Don't know what I'm going to be talking about. Might be the situation in Israel. Might be the upcoming gas hike. That's where we're going to notice it first, is at the gas pumps. I think by the time that increase comes in, we're going to be looking at paying $1.60 or more per liter instead of $1.40 that we were paying just a few short weeks ago. Read that article in the National Post, and you can see the actual report, redacted, all the blacked out sections that the RCMP issued about how Canadians are going to react. The report says that Canadians will be influenced strongly by misinformation and conspiracy theories. We all found out conspiracy theories are so often what become reality. It starts as a conspiracy theory. They're going to rush a vaccine through development and then force you to take it. Oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. And then bang, that's exactly what happens. The Townhouse Gardener says that today gas in Oakville, $1.61. Oakville is just on the western edge of the GTA, of the Greater Toronto Area. It's on the way to Hamilton. I think gas prices are higher out your way. I'm fortunate. I live near Shannonville, which is part of the Tyendinaga Mohawk Reserve. It's about 50 kilometers away from where I live. But because the level of taxes on gas sold on reserves is lower, it tends to be about 10 cents, sometimes a little more, cheaper than what you're paying elsewhere. When it was $1.40 here, I could get it on the reserve for $1.28, $1.29. And for anyone driving along the 401 on your either on your way from or going to Kingston, about halfway between about half an hour or so, half an hour, 40 minutes west of Kingston is a town called Shannonville, and it's part of the Tyendinaga Reserve. And if you pull in there, you can get gas significantly cheaper than what it costs. And it's only a 5-10 minute little drive off the 401, just go south. Reading the Townhouse Gardener says Highway 52 and 403. So that's where they are, Highway 52 and 403. I don't know if there are any reserves out your way, but anytime you can get, there's another reserve up north of Coburg, but it's way up Highway 7 area, and it's called Curve Lake. And they also have cheaper gas, but I find Tyendinaga a lot less expensive. So things are going to get expensive. And the government will hand, I think it's in Ontario, a family of 4 can expect $1,200 in rebates for, they're going to raise the price of everything. Every time you go to fill up your car, it's going to be $15, $20 more than what it used to cost as things keep going. And, depending on how much you drive, your grocery bill is going to go up, your gasoline bill, your filling your car is going to go up, your electricity bill is going to go up, your hydro or your natural gas bill is going to go up. All these things are going to go up. That $1,200 is not going to last very long. Oh, okay. Townhouse Gardener is saying that Highway 52 and 403 is a Six Nations reserve. Townhouse Gardener is saying, why do they make us pay the tax and then give some back to us? I don't understand that. It's politics. It's politics. The way it's a liberal mindset that you and I are too stupid to make the right choices, and we also have an immediacy bias. We only see that which is right in front of our face. So they hold up $1,200. That's what they're saying. An Ontario family of four will receive in rebates. $1,200 seems like a big sum of money. Well, okay, I'm paying a few bucks more at the gas station. Yeah, 10, 15 bucks more to fill up your car every time. Your grocery bill, maybe you're paying 100 or so per week. Now it's 120, 125 every week, but $1,200. And so basically, my view is that the liberal mindset is to make us all dependent on government. We all become employees of the government. We have to jump through all the government hoops, and it allows them to create a new bureaucracy. And, more and more government. Government just keeps growing. Companies, when their market share declines, the companies shrink. Government, doesn't matter whether the economy is growing or not, government always gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I've become much more of a libertarian, not liberal, libertarian. Libertarians believe in less government, not more. But there is a significant element of the population in Canada who thinks government is the one who's going to solve all their problems. The government has to do something, whereas the conservative mindset is to say, government is the problem, get out of my way, and I'll solve the problem myself. Townhouse Gardener, my gas bill for my townhouse was $55, now it's $125. And it's going to keep going up. It's going to keep going up. And there are at the end of the day, there are little things that you can do to lower that somewhat, a little, but with these carbon tax increases, you'll never get ahead of the game. So thank you for the likes. Thank you for the thumbs up. Anyone subscribing, thank you. I'm going to end it here. Wish I had a more hopeful message. We'll talk to you on Sunday. Probably be about faith. God bless.